Hey, it's Mike. In this video, I'm going to show how digital marketing agencies can use the GoHighLevel software platform and specifically the workflows features of the GoHighLevel software platform to create automation within their agency as well as to create automated services for their customers. Let's get into it. Okay, if you're familiar at all with GoHighLevel, you are familiar, I'm sure, with the workflows feature. If you're not familiar with GoHighLevel yet, then workflows are essentially the visual automation maps, if you will, that you can create inside of the software platform to automate a lot of the different marketing activities that are happening inside of the software. So if you've used any sort of funnel builder, ClickFunnels or an Active Campaign or Infusionsoft, anything like that, Keep now, then you're familiar with these. It's the way that you visually lay out the automations that are happening inside of the software. It's incredibly powerful. And it allows you to theoretically create a very automated business and to create very automated services for your customers. And the only reason I say theoretically is because I find a lot of people don't take nearly as much advantage of these as they could. And I think the reason why is due to some complexity, a little bit of overwhelm. And in this video, I'm hoping what I can do is teach you a bit of an approach and system and best practices that are going to help you get past that overwhelming complexity and start putting workflows to full use at your agency. I have been using workflows in various formats from different systems for years now, and I've created so many of them that over time, it got to be this great big rat's nest of automation sequences that I wasn't really sure what the heck was happening, what was coming and going anymore. And I realized, man, I need to step back and have a process and some best practices to follow around this. And that's what I'm going to share with you here today. Right, there are 5 primary tips that I want to give you here in terms of best practices to have in mind as you're developing workflows to make sure that you have the best chance at success. Okay, number 1 is to have a big picture in mind. What I mean by that is that if you just start creating a bunch of workflows every time you see an opportunity come up that you think deserves some sort of automation, you're pretty soon going to have that big rat's nest of automations that you're going to have a really hard time knowing what exactly is actually happening within the software, because you're going to have overlapping functions from one workflow to the next. Pretty soon you've got a real big mess. So you need to have a big picture in terms of how you're going to approach this so that you don't get lost in the weeds and you don't have those overlapping functions happening in the workflows that can cause a lot of problems at your business. I have a particular framework called my 5F framework that I will show you here in this video that I use to, again, kind of keep that big picture in mind. Number 2 is to have standard naming conventions. Okay, this is one of those things that's so simple. It's so simple not to do though as well. It's so easy not to do. Having standard naming conventions so that when you are looking at the workflow name, you should be able to tell what it does so that you don't actually have to dig into the workflow and look at every step to understand it. Again, when you start having a bunch of workflows, if you have to actually click into the workflow and go through the steps to try and figure out what it's doing, you're in big trouble. You're going to waste a ton of time and you've created a lot of complexity that's going to slow you down. So having a standard naming convention for your workflows, as simple as that sounds, is incredibly important. Okay, tip number 3 is to keep it simple. I know you've seen some guru try to impress you with some funnel map that they've created where they've shown you this big elaborate scheme that they're telling you is automating everything so that they can go sit on the beach and make money, and it's got all these different variables and arrows going off in all kinds of different directions, based on what a person did or didn't do at every single step. I'm telling you right now that they probably don't actually use that. They've probably just put it together as part of some sort of marketing pitch because they think it looks cool. It is almost impossible to build out something like that in your business and have it be practical in any sort of way. The reason why is if you want to make any sort of changes or something gets broken in there, you just have a giant mess that you have to sort through and potentially redo the thing all over again. It makes no sense other than to try and impress you in a marketing video. So keep these things simple. I like to have each workflow have a primary function that when that primary function is done, I move on to another workflow. It just keeps things nice and easy. It keeps things kind of modular so that I can bolt things together. It keeps it simple. Okay, so that's tip number 3, keep it simple. Tip number 4 then, as I suggested before in tip number 3, I suggest that you move from and to workflows rather than trying to jam everything into a workflow. So again, have a primary objective for your workflows, and then once somebody has gone through and accomplished that primary objective in that workflow, move them off to another workflow. And when you move them off to another workflow, you want to remove them from the old workflow. Okay, this keeps things nice and clean and organized and allows you to track where somebody is with a real high degree of accuracy. All right, tip number 5 is to use a checklist when you're building your workflows. This is going to stop you from making all kinds of mistakes that are going to drive you crazy. Just like a pilot of an airplane uses a checklist before they take off to make sure that they have dotted all their I's and crossed all their T's, you want to do the exact same thing when you're creating your workflows, all right? When you create a workflow and put it in place, that workflow can be there for a long time, and every single prospect or customer that enters that workflow has the experience that the workflow is designed to deliver. And if you left something out or got something confused, that means that everybody going through that can have that poor experience and you may not even know it. So we just want to make sure that we use the checklist to have the greatest chance of success when we create that workflow the first time. I've got a checklist that I'll share with you that you can get when you're done watching this video. I'll send it to you so you can use mine, take it, improve it, and it will definitely serve you as you're building these workflows going forward. Okay, so those are 5 just high-level best practices, 5 best practices that are gonna help you make workflows successfully in HighLevel. Okay, before we get into some of the nitty-gritty, there are 3 different types of workflows, in my opinion, that can help you stay organized in terms of your overall approach to this. The first are what I call function-specific workflows. So a function-specific workflow example is like a missed call text back. It is a very specific function. Somebody calls you, you miss the call, you want to text them back to get in touch with them. That's a very specific function, okay? The second kind of workflow is a funnel-specific workflow. So let's say that you are bringing somebody into a lead magnet, and then from that lead magnet, putting them through a very specific sales approach to try and convert them. That is a funnel, and you're going to have a workflow for that funnel. So that's the second kind of workflow. The third kind of workflow are your core sales and marketing workflows. So you will have a core sales and marketing process and approach at your business. Things like putting people into a sales appointment and following up with them, things like that, that those should be pretty steady state. And so you can design those and have them in place. And then you're building these funnel specific and function specific workflows around those core sales and marketing workflows. Again, I have my 5F framework for these core funnels, the sales and marketing funnels that I will share with you that will help you keep things organized. All right, so those are the 3 different types of workflows. You've got the function specific, funnel specific, and then your core sales and marketing workflows. All right, here we are at my computer. I'm gonna walk you through my 5F formula. This is how I organize my marketing big picture so that I can then build the workflows to match this big picture and keep everything organized and know exactly what each workflow is doing, why it exists, what it's accomplishing, what its goal is, so that I can keep things organized. If you don't have a big picture like this, you're gonna have an absolute rat's nest in HighLevel before you get too far along, because you're gonna start building things and pretty quickly you're not gonna know exactly what you built one thing for versus the other. Do they have overlapping objectives and capabilities? And it becomes really messy really quickly. So you've got to have a big picture. That's what my 5F formula does for me. Okay, my 5 Fs are: I'm trying to find the right prospects to market to. I'm trying to filter, which means out of all the people that I get in touch with, I want to know which ones are actually interested in buying my services and doing that in the relatively short term so that I can turn them into a real sales opportunity. Frame them. Frame them means like psychologically frame them to want to do business with me versus the competition. So I'm doing that by educating them. I'm doing that by keeping my brand in front of them. I'm doing that by sharing testimonials with them so that, again, they are building up some sort of trust and prefer to work with me versus the competition. And then follow up, okay, when somebody has indicated that they are an actual opportunity, they're interested in buying services pretty soon, that's when I want to do some real serious follow-up to make sure that I stay in front of them and try and win that opportunity. And then the final F is follow through. This is when they've become a customer and it's now time for me to follow through on my promises and make sure that I'm actually delivering the goods. Okay, so those are my 5 Fs: find, filter, frame, follow up, and follow through. And I'm able to organize all of my workflows within those 5 Fs so that I know exactly what they are, exactly what they're trying to accomplish, and how they work together. All right, so let's go over to HighLevel, and I'm going to show you an example of how I've built out these workflows inside of HighLevel to match the 5 Fs. Okay, so here we are inside of HighLevel, and you can see I have a folder here called my Leverage Selling 5F Workflow Templates. Okay, Leverage Selling is my program that I've put together, my course that I've put together. That is the overall methodology around how I market and how I use workflows and the 5F framework to manage my marketing. So Leverage Selling 5F Workflow Templates. One of the best things that you can do is to create templates of the workflows that you're going to use frequently. And the 5F is the foundation of how I organize marketing for myself or any customer that I would be putting together workflows for. So you can see here, again, I've got my 5F workflows. I've got a filter workflow. I've got a follow-up workflow, a frame workflow, follow-through workflow, and you can see here another follow-up workflow. Depending on where they are in my particular sales cycle, I have multiple follow-up opportunities. So each of these workflows does a specific job. So as an example, the 5F lead filter workflow, what I'm trying to do with this workflow is I'm trying to filter out people that are on my list, let's say, that are interested in a particular opportunity here in the short term. So when I'm putting my sales resources onto a prospect, doing follow-up calls and things like that, I want to make sure that they're calling on somebody that's actually expressed some interest here in the short term in potentially buying what we have to offer. Otherwise, they might as well just be doing cold calling, which is a big waste of time and very expensive. So I would much rather they're calling on somebody that's expressed some interest. So a filter workflow, what I'm doing is I am loading, let's say I have a list of 10,000 people that have made it onto my newsletter list, and I'm promoting a new website design and hosting service, okay? So what I would do here is I would apply a tag to those 10,000 people that would put them into this workflow. That's all it would do, is I would just, that's one of the ways that I like to get people into workflows. I would just apply a tag. There's lots of ways that you can get somebody into a workflow. But I apply a tag that puts them into this workflow, and then just as a checkpoint here, it's going to see, hey, have they already bought the product that you're about to promote, Mike? Because if they have, we don't need to promote it again. So if they have, I remove them. If they have not, then I put them into a sequence to filter them. And you can see right here, I've just built out one email sequence just to demonstrate this. But first thing I do is I lock them. And so what I mean by lock, I put a lock tag on them that tells me, hey, they're actually in an active workflow, and so I won't do any other marketing to them. While they have that lock tag on there, I'll exclude them from any other promotions that I'm doing so I'm not confusing messages. So I add that lock tag, and then I send them a filter email. So what do I mean by a filter email? This would just be an email where I would send to them a message saying, hey, Mike, we heard from our customers and prospects here recently that they were struggling with XYZ with their websites. So we've launched a new website hosting service. Is this something that you'd be interested in just having a quick call about to learn more? Something like that. It could be something that direct, or it could be more of a marketing email that's got an image and an offer and things like that, either one. But that's going to have a trigger link in it. So if they click on that trigger link, then I'm going to move them into another workflow because they've expressed interest. If they do not click on that, then this would actually probably be a series of emails. I'd probably send them a few, And if I don't get a response from them by the time I've sent them those few emails, I'd remove the lock tag, and then I would remove that filter tag that got them in here in the first place, and then just remove them from the workflow. Okay, so not everybody on my list is going to be interested in a service at any given time. So I'm going to give them a few opportunities to respond to that. If they don't, we're going to move on and do some different marketing to them so that we're not just beating them over the head about that one service. But that's a filter. What I'm doing is I'm taking all the people on my list and I'm saying, hey, before we go assign any sort of sales resources, okay, any sort of phone calls and follow-ups and trying to get people on the calendar, things like that, I want to make sure that I'm actually talking to interested people. So I would use a filter sequence to find those interested people. Okay, now out of those interested people, I would then put them into a framework flow. Now, depending on what I was selling and how aggressive my sales process is as well, I may have a follow-up at that point too, right? If they click that trigger link and express some more sort of interest, then I may follow up with a very direct, move to put them into a sales opportunity. So, hey, thanks for clicking on that. Book a time on my calendar, that type of thing. Not everybody's going to book on your calendar, and that may not be the next best step in your sales process. So what I often do is put them into a framework flow, and the framework flow is typically where I'm educating them. I may be sharing testimonials with them. I'm trying to increase the trust as well as the customer's knowledge and familiarity with what I have to offer before we actually get into that sales process. So here you can see trigger link clicked. So they clicked on that filter trigger link. That brought them into this workflow. This is going to make sure that they are now out of the old workflow. So remember, one of my best practices that I share with you is when you move from workflow to workflow, you want to take the prospect out of one workflow as you put them into a new one. So I'm going to make sure that they're removed from that other one. I'm going to do a check again here. I'm just doing a check again just to make sure they haven't purchased the thing that I'm promoting. And assuming it's a no, I'm going to create an opportunity in my sales pipeline, because now this is somebody that looks like they're sales ready. They've expressed interest. I'm going to also send them another email, and this email, again, will have a trigger link that is, again, moving them the next step forward in my sales process. And again, depending on what you're selling and what your sales process is, that could be any number of things. And then here you can see I'm closing this opportunity. The reason why I'm closing this opportunity in this workflow is because if they have not clicked on any of the emails that I'm sending and that trigger link, then I'm going to go ahead and assume, again, that they're not interested right now. I'm going to close that out, because if they do click any of those trigger links, I'm going to take them again to the next workflow, right? So you can see how these workflows all kind of cascade together. So I did my frame. I'm doing some educational marketing there. Now they are actually at the point where it is time for some follow-up, okay? And some follow-up, I mean by a salesperson. So they have clicked on, again, that prospect trigger link. And so now I'm removing them from frame. I'm also making sure they're out of filter one more time here. I'm removing certain tags. I'm adding or updating the opportunity here, okay? And then I'm checking again, did they buy that product yet? Because they may have, again, depending on what you're selling. Like in my particular case, I have a lot of products up on my website. They could have just gone to my website and bought this thing by now. So I check again just to make sure I'm not following up with somebody that doesn't need follow-up. And then I'm sending follow-up email here. And that follow-up email, again, depending on sales process, that could be a sequence where I'm giving them a buy button and saying buy, or it could be a sequence where I'm trying to get them onto a calendar and following up with them for an actual sales call. So you can see, I hope, how these 5 F's work together. Now, the cool thing is those 5 F's are universal. Every single business in the world does some version of these 5 F's. Again, depending on the sales process, in some cases, one of those F's may be longer and drawn out and have a lot more steps to it and a lot more involvement from salespeople, or it could be a restaurant and there's none of that. We're just kind of sending coupons and doing some basic, SMS and email marketing activity. So depending on the business, you would take these workflows and take these structures of these workflows and use them as the big picture to design the workflows for that particular business, for that particular industry. So the nice thing is, once you understand these 5 F's and you've got this organization in your mind, I can sit down with any business in the world and say, well, here's how your marketing process works. There's these 5 F's, and we just design the workflows to pull somebody through from that very first F all the way through the entire process until they're a customer. And the frame in particular is nurturing them. That will be a long-term cycle where we are nurturing prospects during that frame workflow. We could have multiple frame workflows in some cases where we're nurturing a prospect over time in case there's a longer sales cycle and they're not ready to buy yet, right? Which is the majority of prospects are not ready to buy right now. So you want to make sure that you have some long-term nurture there. So this 5F workflow structure, again, keeps me organized with the big picture and allows me to design the workflows for my agency. And it also allows me to design workflows for any other business. So as you understand this, you'll get a mastery of workflows that you can then apply to your customers to design workflows that are very effective for them. Okay, so that 5F framework really does serve as the big picture that allows me to organize my marketing and organize my workflows, and then organize the marketing and workflows for any business that I'm working with as well. But then, as I mentioned before, prior in this video here, there are different types of workflows, right? You've got funnel specific workflows, and you've also got what I call these functional workflows. So some examples of those, if I just go into the other workflow templates, you'll see like a missed call text back workflow. That's a great example of a functional workflow, right? I've just got a workflow to make that missed call text back function happen, all right? So then there are also QBR workflows. This is a really important one for the agency business. QBR stands for Quarterly Business Review. So I've got these workflows that automatically manage the process of making sure that we are reminding customers that it's time for their quarterly business review and getting them booked onto the calendar. So that's a common one that I use frequently. So I've got those just saved up as a template. Appointment workflows are very, very common. Of course, so many different businesses will use sales appointments. So you've got just a variety of these templates that you can just store here, nice and easy. Just grab the templates, copy them, and use them in a variety of different situations very easily rather than starting from scratch. You never want to start from scratch with this stuff if you don't have to. It just makes it much harder. So here are webinar workflows. The great thing is HighLevel provides a library of templates, and those are good, at least starting points to give you something to work with, okay? So you can see here's an example of a birthday campaign workflow. Birthday campaign workflow, this is just a very simple version of it, but that could be something that's associated with a specific funnel, right? You have a birthday promotion funnel. And then also those 5F workflows, I'm telling you that those really are the foundation of everything. The 5F workflows, not only will I use to manage the overall marketing of my business, but I'll also use those to manage the marketing of a specific product or service. So a specific product or service will have its own unique 5F workflow setup so that I can create custom marketing messaging specific to that product or service and have the whole workflow system here to take them through. Okay, so those are really the foundational workflows that, again, once you understand that big picture, you can easily and quickly create a variety of workflows for your business, for your customer's business, and you can do it very quickly, and you can do it with organization, knowing that you've covered all your bases to make sure that you're automating all the important functions of the marketing for your business or for your client's business, okay? I do have a checklist that I use as I go through these to make sure that I have dotted all my I's and crossed all my T's. It's just like a pilot, right? Flying a plane. You want to make sure that you go through and you do that carefully, because once these things are set up and running, if you're missing something important, you may not know it until a lot of people have gone through that workflow. You don't want to have that happen. So if you'd like a copy of that checklist, just look for the link here down below. You can opt in and grab that checklist, and I will send it over to you and walk you through exactly how to use that. Okay, I hope that you have found this video helpful, and please do make sure that you leave any comments or questions down below. I answer them all personally. Please share it with somebody if you think they would get some value from it, and subscribe to my channel, and we will see you on a future video. Thank you so much.